Thank you. Councilmember Kreeger.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, residents of Broomfield, for coming out and talking about this. Before I go into opinions, I have a question for Extraction. It's about the comprehensive plan. I do agree with the mayor. The comprehensive plan, if people aren't aware, because not everybody follows local politics closely, lays out a growth plan for our city, shows where we want industrial areas, where we want apartments, where we want single-family homes, where we want open space, and it kind of maps everything out. So as we grow, it fits together, and we have a good community. And his suggestion, when he says update the comprehensive plan to include oil and gas, is to figure out where these operations should go. Where do they fit in? That is logical, and that should be part of our plan, and I agree, and he is correct on that. Part of updating the comprehensive plan needs to be based on facts, needs to be based on safety data and road impact studies, and if there's not a pipeline, truck traffic, because those are the determining factors of where operations like this or any other operations would go. So it's not just a matter of updating it by opening a Word document and typing stuff in. It's a matter of collecting information and using that to make decisions on how we plan out where these types of operations go. And that will take some time. Not an inordinate amount of time, but it will take some time. So my question to Extraction, and I'd prefer for Mr. Owens, the president, or Mr. Jacobson, I believe it is, the senior vice president of operations, to answer is, can you give us 6 months or so? Maybe we form the task force over the next month or two, and maybe starting in March we have 6 months to do the comprehensive plan. It would mean that you halt your operations, you halt your permitting operations, both with Broomfield and with COGCC, those hearings, and give us an opportunity to do this, because it will take time. It's not going to be done in a month.
Thank you for your question, Councilman Kreeger. From Extraction standpoint, to answer your question, we've been working with the City and County of Broomfield on this matter since around May of 2015. So we're approaching 2 years now, during which time we started with 12 pads under the MOU that we acquired from Sovereign, as you heard from Mr. Metzger. Over the course of that period, we've since consolidated 4 pads. We've now recently agreed to pipelines and no permanent oil tanks, and reduced well count by 35% on Lowell and Sheridan. So we feel like we've been in this process now for 18 months, and another 6 months for various business reasons is relatively untenable to us at the moment. We have this is a significant part of our business, the Broomfield minerals and leasehold position that we have. And hope you can respect that our business plans require us to move forward with development as outlined in our detailed plan and as agreed in the MOU in a fairly rapid fashion. Having said that, it's been brought up several times that we have agreed to postpone until February, the end of February, the application for any further MOUs on Sheridan, as well as the application for our spacing unit amendments with the state of Colorado until March. So we feel between the 18 months we've had, or more, almost 20 months to date, plus another 6 or so, 7 weeks, we feel like that's sufficient time to further negotiations, further discussion, further collaboration, such that we can get our plans in place, as mentioned earlier, to begin operations by the end of 17. One last thing I'll say is, in order to begin our operations at the end of 17, there are an awful lot of things that need to transpire, and it takes 8 to 9 months for all those things to transpire in order for us to commence operations according to the business plan cycle that we need.
Okay. And I just want to let people know, because so much does happen behind closed doors, this was not the first time that somebody has reached out over the last couple days with that idea. And the last time we talked to Extraction, they said that the current plan was a take it or leave it, and if it was not accepted, that it would go to litigation. But I wanted, Extraction to be able to go on the record and for people to hear the question asked. So I do agree with Pat Quinn, and I apologize to him and to our residents. The comprehensive plan should have been updated to include this, to include all oil and gas operations, and then we should be looking for operators, Extraction and others, to be fitting into our plan for our city, the plan that we own. That will take time, and that is going to take a cessation of operations for us to have the time to update that plan. So I am here on behalf of residents of Broomfield. I was elected just over a year ago. The way I see it, we can't have 65,000 people in a conference room attending a meeting. Some people offer to act as representatives or agents of the rest of the community. Those people select us and ask us to do that. That's the way I approach my job. It's as a representative for the others in the community. People are curious always about, I think not always, but mostly about where a person stands on energy when they hear them speak. Like me right now, people want to interpret my comments based on where I stand. They want to predict what I'm going to say based on where I stand. So here is where I stand. I am not pro-fracking or anti-fracking. I will tell you that I think that natural gas is an important part of our energy portfolio as a country. It burns cleaner than oil, burns cleaner than coal, but I don't think that coal, gas, oil, or any other industrial operation or even other energy operations like solar and wind can be done without planning, can be done without thought. They all need to have thought. They all need to be done in the right way. And so while I would like to see us burn more natural gas than coal or oil, I do think that means it has to be still done in a thoughtful way and not just done in some random way. It needs to be done in a planned out way, and that is the point of putting it in the comprehensive plan. I've communicated with just some massive number of residents and experts in this area. I couldn't wager an estimate. I have reached out to tons of people in the community, and far more than that have reached out to me. I have talked to people that are purely anti-fracking and want no fracking anywhere in the country, and certainly not in our community. And I've talked to people that are just all pro-oil and gas, and whatever is asked for, they expect me to say yes. The vast majority of the people I have talked to are not at either of those extremes, but somewhere in the middle. The vast majority of emails that I've gotten asking me to oppose this are from people who are not opposed to fracking or using natural gas, but they're opposed to this plan because of its scale and its proximity to homes, schools, and reservoirs. I don't actually ask people really ever when I talk to them what their political affiliation is, but I will tell you that the two people who are seem to be primarily two of the primary people against this plan who have kind of come in to be neighborhood leaders fighting against this plan chose to share with me that they are conservative Republicans. And it shocked me, and I don't know why I should be shocked by that, but I was. Maybe it's because so many people keep telling me everybody opposed to this is just opposed to fracking, and they're just, you know, radicals that don't understand the real world. And even though I don't try to listen to that, maybe it sticks a little bit. When somebody says, I'm a conservative Republican and I'm trying to lead an effort against this plan, it is surprising. But I want people to know that. I'm sure there's many Democrats, independents, Republicans, but it is a wide spectrum, and it's definitely not all anti-fracking people, and it's definitely not all liberals that are against this plan. I'm going to talk now about how we got here, and it's important because so many people in emails and people who have spoken today say they don't know how we got here, or their comments indicate that they don't know how we got here, and that's because so much has been done behind the scenes and behind closed doors. I'm not going to reveal confidential legal advice that we've received behind closed doors from our attorney or from an outside attorney. That would be out of bounds, but I will tell you how we got here. So Sovereign is a gas company that was operating here in Broomfield. Extraction bought Sovereign's operations here in Broomfield, and that included 26 active fracking wells, vertical wells. And in those 26 active wells were on 10 different sites, and they had the legal ability to drill more based on contracts they had had with previous city councils. Extraction then came to the city, and they described a plan to consolidate those operations and replace 26 inefficient wells, inefficient in terms of their production, with 24 wells, and move them farther from homes and use newer technologies. And Mr. Jacobson, the Senior Vice President of Operations, said it today, consolidate the old wells. That was a term used with us, consolidate the old wells, the old 26 wells, consolidate them. So, first of all, that's not increasing 24 to 141 or 156 or 139. That's not consolidation of the old wells. But let me get to that in a minute. So a lot of the presentation was how newer technology, horizontal drilling, is so good that with fewer wells, they can extract more gas than with a higher number of vertical wells. Okay? They took us on a tour of 3 well sites. I was on one of the tours. Those 3 sites had a total of 24 wells, I believe. And by the way, I know there's 4 wells in play now, but at the beginning we were talking about 4 pads in play. Today we were talking about 3 pads for the MOU. There was a 4th one that was bought from Noble, and that's a little bit separate, but this MOU covered 3 pads. So we toured 3 sites that had 24 wells. Extraction presented a plan to the city and residents. The first presentation was in the HHS building. I know that some of you are there because I recognize your faces and your names. The plan included plugging and abandoning 26 old wells and drilling 24 new ones across 3 sites, just like they had shown us when we went on these tours. We had a clerk that works here for the city taking notes or minutes at that meeting. And in 2 places in the minutes this is referenced. One is when I asked exactly how many wells would be plugged and abandoned and how many more would be drilled. And after, a bunch of words and discussion, I boiled it down to something that was very easy to understand. And I said, so you are telling me that you're going to plug and abandon 26 old wells and you're going to drill 24 new ones? And the answer was yes. And the minutes summarize this as how many wells on the new sites? 24. I asked later, after several questions, about noise mitigation. And I talked about the length of time the drilling would be going on because that's the noisy part of the operation. And I asked, how long can residents expect to have the drilling operations go on? And the answer was a multiplication. It was 24 wells with 4 to 6 days of drilling per well. And that's quoted in the minutes. So twice now. 24 new wells being drilled, along with showing us 24 wells on 3 pads, and along with saying it. Additionally, the minutes from that meeting say that extraction showed us a rendering of what multiple vertical wells look like versus a single horizontal well, and the benefits of that single horizontal well. It was all about reduction and getting more with less. And the minutes quote a resident named Zach as saying he met with extraction and said that they were consolidating onto smaller sites. There's no reference to 141 wells anywhere in the presentation or anywhere in the minutes, nor is there 139 or 156. So I want to say that I voted for extraction's plan last time in June. Residents are mad that we voted for that. I voted for taking 26 old leaky wells and turning them into 24 new wells with a net distance that is farther from homes, newer technology that doesn't leak, because extraction said that they could get more gas out of the ground with less wells. And that seemed like a no-brainer to me, because as close as these pads are to your homes, you have to understand that the current situation has these old wells much closer to homes in many cases, much closer. So this was a better plan. But when, Mr. Jacobson or anyone else says that we've been working on this plan for 18 months, that is not true. I did not vote for this plan. I voted for a plan of 24 wells. Okay. So we've been having some meetings with extraction. We've been trying to move some stuff forward. As you know, extraction changed their plan. They reduced the well count from 141. I know the slide said 140. What was filed was actually 141. Reduced it to 139. The bigger change is moving some of those wells to the easternmost pads because those are farther from homes. I understand still extremely close. I understand, and massive number of wells, but that was a bigger change than the reduction of wells by a number of 2. Okay. 2 of the senior staff in that meeting told us that they attended every resident meeting in the neighborhoods, and that in every resident meeting, the residents were told there would be 40 wells on every pad. I have to say that I've not heard that from any residents. I see head shaking here. I've heard people were told 8 to 10 wells per pad. Of course, the mayor was quoted as saying we were told 8 to 10 wells per pad. So if you're here because you want natural gas extracted from the ground and used, I am with you on that. This is a bridge to get to even cleaner energy than natural gas. And it's a good path that we're on, in my opinion. It's abundant. Again, I voted for this plan when it was 24 wells, but I didn't vote for the current plan, and I object to this bait and switch, really, that we've been subject to. I believe, and even if you're here on behalf of the energy industry, and even if you want every plan that is submitted to us by the industry to be approved, I want you to consider this, if you would, please, with all due respect. There are no businesses or industries that should be allowed to lie to our residents or their city council. Not a bank, not a gas station, not a body shop, not a grocery store. Okay? Nobody should be able to come here and say one thing and do another. And so when we start negotiations at the number of 141, I think we're already off on the wrong foot. Okay? If somebody was selling me a house with a certain number of square feet and at a certain price, and later they say that it's going to be half that square feet and twice the price, and I get mad, and they say, okay, that person miscommunicated. We're taking them off your project. We're giving you a new representative. And that representative says to me, all right, you've got a house with half the square feet and twice the cost that you thought. Now let's start negotiating from that point and see how far we can get. I would say, no, it is a joke. That's right. That's not where we start a negotiation from. So I object to the premise of this. So after we were presented these numbers and this plan, 2 weeks after City Council voted, roughly 2 weeks after, there were applications filed with the state for 141 wells. And applications like that are a bit complex, and there's a lot of work done leading up to the application. They're not done in 2 weeks. It would seem that when we were told these numbers, Extraction knew that there were actually different numbers that they were going to file. And again, I don't care what industry a person is from. I don't care if you're from the solar industry. I don't want you telling me one thing while you're doing another. It seems that there were people that knowingly, falsely misrepresented a material fact on which I justifiably relied on to decide whether to enter into this agreement. Okay. As part of the research I did, several of us were at a meeting with COGCC, a few of their staff members, and the director of COGCC recommended that we listen to a scientist who's done a great amount of research, Ms. McKenzie. He seems to find her work credible, which is why he recommended her to us. And fortunately, I got the opportunity very soon after that. So this is somebody who's credible to the oil and gas industry. So I thought, well, it'll be interesting to see what I hear. You know, if it's somebody that's set up by anti-fracking people or pro-fracking people, you always expect to hear some slanted opinion. It was interesting. She came with two other people, and the three of them presented in a very unbiased way. They debunked a lot of myths and arguments from the pro-fracking industry and a lot of myths and arguments from the anti-fracking industry. I thought it was right down the middle. Some of the things that they did present were about the emissions, and it is important to capture emissions because the emissions are harmful. It is poisonous. You have to capture them. If it wasn't poisonous, we wouldn't bother capturing the emissions. She talked about particulates, and somebody had asked about how far the particulates travel. She said the particulates can travel hundreds or thousands of kilometers, in some cases. It depends on the particulate. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers, so hundreds of miles, and in some cases thousands of miles. But what's important is that as they're traveling hundreds of miles or thousands of miles, they're dissipating, they're thinning out. It's not like they're as concentrated hundreds or thousands of miles away as they are at the well site. But what we're talking about is people living within 500 feet of these wells, not hundreds or thousands of miles away. So my question is what the concentration is at 500 feet. We have elementary schools and we have middle schools that are maybe 1,300 feet. This is a type of information that we need to know. From 42 wells or 29 wells or whatever the count is, at what distance do these emissions dissipate to the point where they are safe to breathe? I've been doing such an unbelievable amount of thinking about this, and I keep coming back to this image of a family in their house and the air in their house being full of these emissions, contaminated from these wells, or kids in a classroom, and the air in the classroom is full of this stuff. I need to know that if we're going to put 139 wells just south and east and north of homes and schools, that the air in those homes and schools is going to be completely clean. And that is one of the points of updating the comprehensive plan, is you use that information to figure out where this stuff should go. I need to address the urgency of mining for this natural gas, because a lot of people talk about the benefits we get from gas and oil, and we do. I heat my house. I drive a gas-burning car. I use oil and gas on a daily basis. Every day, right now, it's burning in my house. So the question is, how urgent is it, and do we need to put 141 wells right next to homes? Well, here is the situation. Our country right now exports natural gas to other countries. If we were using all of this and we had a shortage and there was an energy crisis, you do everything that you have to do to get it out of the ground. But based on industry-provided information, industry-provided information, we are exporting natural gas, I'm not talking about oil and refined oil and things like that, to Canada, Mexico, Japan, Taiwan, Brazil, Chile, China, Egypt, India, Portugal, South Korea, Spain, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. And we are growing our exports of natural gas to the point that we're going to be a net energy exporter in the next couple of years, if we stay on this track, which it looks like we will. I'm not against exporting. I know a lot of people say that's ludicrous. We should use what we need and keep the rest in the ground. We shouldn't be exporting energy to other countries. I understand that point of view. I could probably get on board with that. I might not be as adamantly against exporting as other people, but I see their point of view. But what I do know is that if we are exporting this energy to countries like China and Egypt and Taiwan and all these other places, we're not in a crisis that says that we have to drill right now with 140 wells right next to homes. You can't have it both ways. If it's a crisis of that magnitude, then boy, shame on the industry for exporting this gas to other countries. I do have concerns. People keep asking what amount of wells would be okay, where they would be located, how far from homes would I be comfortable. I've talked with tons of people about this. You get that information by looking at the studies. We don't need a moratorium to study health effects. You can't study health effects in 6 months. But guess what? There's zillions of studies out there, and there's people that will present to us that have studied this for years. We don't need to study health effects. We need to use that data to figure out where wells can go, in what numbers and at what proximity to homes and schools or drinking reservoirs. We need to know how many trucks on the road for every well if there's not a pipeline, so we know what roads are going to be impacted and how much by the number of wells. I need this information to know how many wells I'm comfortable with and where in the city. That is the process that former Mayor Quinn proposes. And that is a process that I am on board with, because we need to answer these questions. Just two other things, and then I'll talk about in 1 minute where I think we go from here. People have talked about tax revenue a lot. Tax revenue is important to me. I'm a fiscal hawk. I want budgets to be balanced. I want to understand pros and cons of spending money. I want to understand return on investment. I want to know that when I approve an expenditure of our money, that it's a wise expenditure. And so I want to talk about the tax revenue. The amount of revenue that is projected, the range, would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.1% of our annual budget per year, up to possibly like 0.3% of our annual budget per year. And, you know, while I never throw away money, this isn't the major consideration. It, you know, for our budgetary purposes, it's literally a mathematical rounding error. So where do we go next? I think that we need to take the time to figure out where we want oil and gas operations in the city. I know some people say if we want, but whichever, how we're going to incorporate these operations into our city. Where will the trucks be? Where will the wells be? I think there are opportunities. I think there are places where we want less wells or no wells because they're so close to residences. And I think there's places where we can identify as being industrial areas in Broomfield where maybe we can have more wells. But we do need time to do this. We need time to look at the facts and information and put together a plan. And then I would want all operators to live within that plan. And this isn't just for oil and gas. We ask all industries to do this. We have industrial areas. We have things that are allowed in the broadlands and not allowed, and things allowed south of 120th and not allowed. We're always doing this. We're doing it with almost every type of business. We have zoning all over the city, and what we need is some comprehensive planning for this industry too. It's probably the one that's most significantly lacking. So I think that we do need a moratorium. And no, it's not to do a bunch of research. The research is done. And no, it's not a stall tactic. We need it to put together a comprehensive plan because we should have done that before. And at the end of the comprehensive plan, we'll know as a community where we're comfortable with what types of operations. I don't appreciate the negotiations to this point. Having said that, I'm always willing to watch for a change in negotiations. Extraction staff from here on out may negotiate in a different way. I'm not going to be punitive about what's happened in the past. I think that we need to start the negotiations fresh with either the current situation that exists, 26 active wells on 10 sites, or with the proposal that the minutes reflect, which is 24 wells. Either one. But I think that we have to have a different type of negotiation going forward. And if that happens, then I am fine with that. I can work with Extraction. I've met them 3 times in smaller meetings, and we had no problem discussing things in a rational and respectful way. I'm always capable of doing that. I could put aside emotion and talk business, but that does have to be a pivot to a different type of negotiation than what happened in May or June. I just need to emphasize that. So I will support the moratorium so that we can update our comprehensive plan. I do think that Extraction, by the way, did tell us that if they were given a little bit of time, they're confident that they can come up with a plan that the council and the community can get behind. And I am for giving them that time. They asked until February. I would be comfortable with a moratorium starting in March even. Give them 2 months to redo a plan, show it to the public in the forum that Charles Ozaki was talking about. And if they can come together, come up with a plan that we can all get behind, wow, would that be fantastic. I would applaud them and I would help them because that is, of course, what I want is a plan that the public will support and a plan I will support. I think we can give them that time. I think if a moratorium started in March, then we all know it's there. So if the plan doesn't come to fruition, a moratorium goes in place before the COGCC hearings that are in March. I think if a plan did come to fruition and we're all thinking, wow, this looks great, I can get on board with this plan, we drop the moratorium. We don't need to go through with it. We could cancel it if it came to that. But at least we all know what date we're working towards. And then for a 6-month moratorium, I think it's challenging to update the comprehensive plan like we need to in only 6 months, but I think we can work unbelievably hard at it and get it done in 6 months. And that's the point of it, because some people have asked today, what is the point? The point is to give us an ability to study this plan and to study the overall gas and oil industry in Broomfield. We have not done planning for 141 wells. And partially because that's not the plan that we were presented. So we do need the time to understand this plan and its ramifications. And I'm afraid that if we're not given the time voluntarily, and that is what I would prefer, I think Extraction has dug themselves a hole, and I think the honorable thing to do is to say, we have dug a hole, we will dig ourselves out of it. We owe you the time to do the study of this plan and its impacts, and we're going to give it to you voluntarily. But if that doesn't happen, then my opinion is we just need to take the time if we're not given it. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.